Move on with our class. We were talking about Armageddon, and the scripture was, and he gathered them to that place in the Hebrew tongue called Armageddon, and this is symbolic of the Christian religion interprets this as the great battle before the coming of Christ between good and evil. The nations of the earth are going to really battle it out, but we're told Armageddon comes from Har Megiddo, which means mountain of Megiddo, and there's no mountains there. And so the mountain part of Armageddon stands for spiritual consciousness. So they gather together at Armageddon, a place that forces them to confront higher consciousness. And that's what it's all about. And this is exemplified in our what's happening today. Then we're told the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air. So air is symbolic of mind. Mind is the governing agent of the new age that we're entering, the age of Aquarius. We're leaving Pisces, which is governed by water, which was governed by passion and emotion, symbolic of the Crusades and burning witches at the stake, and
Inquisition,
the passion of Christ himself, all these things. And remember, these energies are neither good or bad depending on how they're used. So we're moving from being governed by emotion to being governed by mind. And so this final angel here pours his vial upon the air. And so to stimulate people's minds. And then there was a great earthquake, such as men had never seen before. An earthquake is symbolic, and the scriptures here is symbolic of the shaking of men's belief systems. So what we approach in Armageddon is a shaking of the belief systems of the people of the planet. Now, keep in mind, there's just not one Armageddon, but there's all kinds of Armageddons. You could say there was an Armageddon at the Civil War, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, because you had people breaking off from the main powers that be, and you had trying to take people into a higher state of consciousness, symbolized by the mountain here in Armageddon. And we had this tremendous conflict, and they were able to beat them back, and then the consciousness of those that were victorious was raised up, and it raised up the whole planet to a degree, because there's all kinds of nations that has copied the Constitution of the United States and incorporated them into their own constitution. Even dictators have done that. We've had third world dictators. Their actual constitution is very close to ours. It's just that they don't abide by it. But it's amazing how many constitutions throughout the world take ingredients from our constitution, but at least it heads them in the right direction, even if the country is led by a person that disregards the law and just makes his own law. The words are still there, and eventually the words cannot be wiped out, and they will inspire people to gravitate to them. People gravitate to greater freedom and light eventually. It's like we go 2 steps forward and 1 back. Or you might even say more steps than that. But sometimes it's 10 to 1, maybe you go 9 10 steps forward and 9 back. So, but the direction is always forward. So sometimes it seems like you're going backwards because we do go backwards for a period of time, but then we eventually go forward more than backward when the whole picture is seen. Then it talks about the great city Babylon in this great conflict. And the great city was divided into 3 parts. This was after the great earthquake. And the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Now, Babylon stands for confusion of the masses. And the masses are confused because their focus is on the emotional nature, which in esoteric writings is always called the astral world. And to see correctly, you have to rise above the astral and go to the higher mind, and then you can see correctly. But when the average person looks out into the world, he sees through the vision of the filter of emotional energy. And this is like looking in a mirror. When you look in a mirror, Adam, we'll pick on Adam here. Do you see your real self? Or if you don't, what do you see?
Just a trick question. I just see a reflection of myself.
Yeah. Is it the way you really look?
Uh, no, it's close enough, but no.
It seems to be, doesn't it? But you hold up a newspaper to a mirror, what do you see? Do you see it
Backwards.
do you see it as it is?
No, it's backwards.
Yeah, it's reversed, isn't it? Okay. But when you look at your face in a mirror, you just think, well, and you look at everything else in the room in a mirror, it seems normal. And you don't really realize you're seeing everything in reverse unless you hold up some print. You hold up some print, and then you can't even read it. Okay. So that's an interesting thing. And this
Every
is,
time I look in the mirror, I see an old man looking back at me.
yeah.
That's
So
scary.
instead of that young guy that it is.
Yeah, I think the house is haunted.
So it's interesting when you feel that when people filter their vision through their emotional self, they don't see correctly. They see everything in reversed, but they see enough so that everything seems just as normal as the other guy that's seeing correctly. So you hold a mirror up to a person that's say easily deceived, and then have another person who sees correctly, and you both look in the mirror, you will see the same thing. Okay, so as the people that are enlightened and raise up to the plane of the mind, as they function in the world, it seems like when you look at the overall picture, they're seeing the same thing. But then when you get down to the details, like the print, it's entirely different. That's why when you get down to the details, you take the person polarized in the astral compared to the person polarized in the mind, they will not be able to agree. One sees the print that's reversed like in a mirror, the other sees it as it really is. And the guy that's have you ever tried to read something in a mirror? You know, if you really concentrate, and you can get a few words, and you would have to really focus a lot to be able to read the print in a mirror. Some people are able to do this, but would take a lot of attention. But most people that are seeing in this reversed way, they don't try to see correctly. They just figure seeing reverse is the true reality, but it's not the truth. But stepping back and looking at the whole picture, they both see it as the same thing. We both see a tree as a tree and we see Ed here as I see his picture on the screen right here. I see Ed as Ed. And but we do not realize, the emotional person doesn't realize that he's seeing reversed. So think of the print. When you see the big picture, they can agree. You know, we can agree the sun is shining and a bunch of general stuff like that. But then you get down to the details of life. There's tremendous conflict because the emotional filtered person sees the reflection as in a mirror, sees it distorted, cannot interpret it correctly, whereas the mentally polarized person will be able to see it correctly. Now, if two people disagree, they can't both be right. You're going to either have one or two things be the truth here. Either one is right and one is wrong, or they're both wrong. So either they're both saying the reflection that's distorted, or one sees a distortion and one sees the truth. But if two people disagree, then they cannot both be correct.
That's like the blind man and the elephant.
Yeah. 2 + 2 = 4. It doesn't equal anything else. If somebody argues it's 5 and one guy argues it's 4, one is right and one is wrong. Now, if one guy argues it's 5 and another guy argues it's 6, and they're both disagreeing, well, they're both wrong. And oftentimes in arguments that we see on TV, there's a lot of political arguments going on cable and YouTube and different places. And you can see how sometimes it's obvious who's right and who's wrong. And other times, if you're not really familiar with the subject, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. So Babylon is this confusion. Babylon is the confusion that caused by this reverse seeing that all kinds of people have. And the mountain of Armageddon is where the attempt is made by the servants of God to lift people up to be able to see above this distorted vision that people that are subject to the astral nature are subject to. So it's an attempt to lift them up, and an attempt to lift them up causes tremendous conflict. And then it says, so Babylon is that great city where this confusion reigns. There's people in Babylon arguing for one thing and somebody else arguing for another thing. And then when the real truth is presented in a way that's hard to refute, then the great city is divided into 3 parts. And the 3 parts is interesting. The first part is, we could call it the conservative polarity. The second part is the liberal or the progressive polarity. And the third part are those that see reality as it is, which can be elements of both the conservative and the liberal. He can see the truth of both sides. Okay, and these I submit are the 3 parts that happen. So what this is saying, in other words, is there's all this reverse seeing, this confusion, because people see through their feeling nature and interpret incorrectly. The truth is presented, and you have a division of approach to the new revelations that are presented to society. You have the liberals taking one take, the conservative the other, and then a handful of people see down the middle where they can see the true reality, the truth that both sides miss to a degree. And then it says, the cities of the nations fell. Okay, cities of the nations represent many belief systems and ideologies where there is one polarity standing against another polarity. And this happens in many different areas of our life. The most obvious right now is in politics. We see the liberal against the conservative. And in religion, we see one religious idea against another, one claiming that they know the real Jesus and nobody else knows him, and you gotta come to our Jesus or you can't be saved. And then in business and commerce, you have a strong competition among different businesses. And in world affairs, you have nation against nation. Right now, for instance, Ukraine against Russia, and then the different nations supporting them, and Israel against various Islamic groups. And we have these various divisions. And one of the biggest divisions right now, we have competition governing many areas of life, and the higher revelation that takes us above competition is cooperation. And cooperation is slowly starting to replace competition, but it's very incremental. And we see this with businesses. For instance, a lot of businesses are surfacing now that's owned by the employees, and it's a lot more cooperative than a business owned by someone that's just a boss of the business that can give orders and tell everybody what to do. And then he says, every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. An island here represents a group of people under a separative belief system. So when the truth is presented in such a way that it has to be accepted, like we can go back to the Civil War. Before the Civil War, slavery was accepted by a lot of people as just normal. And then eventually we had a presentation that the slaves should be free. We should eliminate slavery. And people really rejected that. But then when the dust settled after the Armageddon of the Civil War, now every belief system, separative belief system that supported that fled away. Every island fled away, and every island fled away that supported slavery. So you can't find anyone in the free world now that thinks slavery is a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have your slave.
Be nice to have a few slaves. I'd probably just have to pay them is all.
Well, Musk is developing these robots. He thinks everybody's going to have at least 2 robots in another 20 years or so, and they'll only cost about 10 or 20,000 a piece. Be like buying a car. So he says, yeah. So I think if that happens, we're all going to get lazy. You won't have to go mow your lawn. Just tell your robot to go mow your lawn, Curtis, and make your dinner. You can just sit around and screw around all day long. He can even go do your spraying and stuff for you.
Our speech will slow down too, like the Southern drawl.
Yeah, right. So the mountains are not found. Mountains here represent the kingdoms of the world. And this tells us that the Armageddon, the conflict between the truth and error, between seeing things as they are and seeing things through a reverse mirror image. When that is corrected, so we will understand, because we, for instance, when we understand when we hold a newspaper up to a mirror, we understand it reverses it. But people in the world don't understand about the reversal in thinking that happens when we see things through our emotional lens. And this one has to be corrected. And when it's corrected, the mountains or the kingdoms of the world will be completely altered. Okay, and they have to be altered to prepare for the new age and the coming of Christ. And then there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, and every stone about the size of a talent or 100 pounds. Can you imagine hail? Each hailstone weighing 100 pounds, that'd be pretty tough storm. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, and the plague thereof was exceedingly great. Well, it tells us that to counteract this Babylonian thinking of confusion caused by wrong seeing, when the truth is clearly presented, it will strike those that are centered in the feeling nature like a great hailstone, 100-pound hailstone coming and hitting you on the head. I mean, you think, boy, you would curse God because of that, okay? And that's the way that they will approach stark truth that is presented to them, as if it was a great hailstorm that's trying to destroy them. And look at Jesus. He was like a great hailstorm to the authorities of his age. They wanted to get rid of him. They felt like they were being hit on the head with great pellets of hail because of what Jesus was doing. And he says, if we let this man go, he's going to destroy everything we believe in. And to them, it was like a plague, and it made them curse God. But remember the high priest, when Jesus's trial, he ripped his garment off and cursed because of Jesus wouldn't say he wasn't the Son of God. And so that truth just struck them like a great stone of hail. And so this is basically the problem with Armageddon, is it produces tremendous. Armageddon is where you have the conflict, the confusion reigns for maybe centuries or millennia, and then you eventually reach a point to where the conflict has to be resolved, just like slavery is just one. And remember, Armageddon isn't just one, but it's happened in a number of different areas of life. Slavery was one, and we had time and time again, there were people that were against it, but they didn't really do anything. And eventually we had Abraham Lincoln come along, and he struck the blow that put it to bed and made it obvious that it was an evil that needed to be extinguished. And so he was the one that won the Battle of Armageddon in that particular cycle. Now we're having another cycle where we have tremendous conflict. And there has been tremendous effort to suppress truth. You have, like when we had the coronavirus, if you presented any way to treat the virus that ran contrary to what the pharmaceuticals told you were supposed to believe, your speech was suppressed. They suppressed it on all the media at that time. It was suppressed. You couldn't say that ivermectin had any positive effects at all, or any of these other treatments, or any natural treatments. The only thing was to go through the orthodox procedures. That's just one item. And so the freedom of expression has to be there for the truth to be revealed. And as long as there's freedom of expression, then the truth eventually comes out and you have the conflict. And when the truth comes out, it strikes those that were on the path of confusion, like a great hailstorm that was destroying all they believed in. And then eventually the truth will prevail. But the truth only prevails after a battle of Armageddon is fought.
What's interesting is you have an avatar like Lincoln, and as soon as he completed his assignment, he was killed. And the same thing with Churchill. As soon as after World War II, you'd have thought he would have been reinstated.
Yeah, they voted him out.
No,
I can never understand that.
Into oblivion.
Yeah, that was really odd that they rejected him after he won the war. But
They'll pay for that.
Okay, any other comments on Armageddon? Now, we also have Armageddon in our personal lives. You know, you have your conflict. We all grow up with certain wrong beliefs where we're seeing incorrectly. And then when the truth is revealed, the natural thing is to resist it. And I can identify with this in my own life, different times where I have moved from error to truth. And you want to, the natural desire is to hold on to that error because you got so much, maybe you got 20 or 30 years invested in that error. So, you know, it's difficult to let it go if you've got a lot of time invested in a wrong path. And so anybody here relate how maybe in their own life they've had their personal Armageddon where they had to change course and come to a truth that they had previously rejected?
Well, I think also too, one of the hard things for me was my dad, who, for example, was an oncologist, very pro-vaccine, and that's just what he was trained to do, and most doctors are trained to do that. And the problem with and until he gets a vaccine injury, then all of a sudden his foundational teachings are being shook by his own now physical symptoms he's dealing with, and I had to basically go for like help him out, which is ironic, the son helping out the father, but the father doesn't believe what the son is doing. It's very ironic, but I feel like it's a lesson because I feel one of our biggest faults that we have as human race is that we lack patience. But if you want to see truth fulfilled, it takes lots of patience to wait for it to finally be revealed. Like, for example, I think just 3 days ago, I think Pfizer released all the negative symptoms of the vaccine just like 3 or 4 days ago, and there's a huge list of it, and everyone's been posting it everywhere saying this is exactly why we were trying to avoid this, and we lost friends, we lost jobs, we lost everything because why didn't they release this list earlier? It's because they were too busy promoting it. And so I just feel like, again, when it comes to truth, I just feel like you'll only really know the full satisfaction of it after long periods of time, kind of like the author Schopenhauer quote where the German philosopher, he said, like, truth will be rejected and violently opposed, and then it will be served as self-evident. But it has to go through those 3 stages before it becomes or those 2 other stages before it becomes self-evident.
Yeah, right. There's 3 stages. First of all, it's violently opposed, and then secondly, what was the second? The third is, well, they figure it was right all along. Was the third?
Yeah, they accept it, and they think, well, that was my idea all along.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay.
It's funny. I don't know how many people here never got the vaccine, but I got an impression from within not to get it and never did.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny too. You got to look at new revelations as stepping stones. Like I studied eternal progression as far as it would take me under Orthodox belief systems, and then reincarnation just took it to a whole new level. It wasn't like I did away with anything. It's like a lot was added to what I believed. So it was like a stepping stone.
I think it's also too like the I don't know if anyone's watched the movie The Lost City of Z, but it showed how the I'm trying to remember what the travelers the person who's the main expedition guy who basically was the prototype for Indiana Jones, but everyone was rejecting him about ancient civilizations actually being more intelligent than the current race. I feel like there's this programming that society has in the zeitgeist that we're more intelligent than anything that has ever happened before us, which is a very ignorant claim, and that some of the ancients were way more advanced than we are. And what did the ancients use is medicine from the earth, like herbs and plants and everything like that. And for us to suggest that we can do it better through a pill form of chemicals than what our ancients used to use is just kind of our fault. And this is why we're falling into to getting
It's
hurt. We're getting hurt.
supreme arrogance.
Yeah, and look at it's interesting with the um, pyramids and other ancient construction projects. The stones they used were many tons bigger than a couple dump trucks. I mean, more heavy. We don't use large stones like that for any of our construction. We use small stones and put them together, but they used giant stones. And how did they move them around? And some of the materials for these stones had to have been moved hundreds of miles, not only for the pyramids but for Stonehenge. Um, some of those stones had to have been moved hundreds of miles. How did they do that? Yet Orthodox archaeologists don't just have Orthodox explanations. Well, they use these little copper things to cut out the stones, and so they've
Maybe they were giants.
yeah, but they obviously had some type of technology to work with stone that was lost, but they don't want to admit that. And
Yeah,
so
similar to the bells that they kind of did a ransack to all the different type of amazing bells in sort of China culture. I think maybe in Russia too, but there were these huge bells that provided certain frequencies. But they were like almost the government did sort of a boycott to remove these bells, but they don't understand that anciently they used these bells to provide a certain frequency in town, or who knows, maybe even the building that you were talking about, it was frequencies were used to create these pyramids, frequency devices that we don't have now,
Yeah, that's
but
interesting, Emmanuel, because the cathedrals were built in such a way that the voices of the singers would resonate through the cathedrals and produce these really beautiful sounds and tones.
you mean the ones in the Middle Ages?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did some marvelous construction in the Middle Ages, which is quite amazing.
And it was all designed to raise consciousness and to titillate the vertical ascension.
My,
Okay.
my last comment is that you're totally right, Curtis, because even they did a blindfold study with Dr. David Hawkins, and they were muscle testing the frequency of these very spiritual buildings, and it was above 500, which is kind of ironically what people get when they drink lots of alcohol. They kind of they go into a state of elation for moments, but they can't stay there. It's kind of like a robbery of joy, you know. But basically, these buildings, I think it's interesting how we go as tourists to go visit them, and we stand in awe. but they were made to look up, and they were meant for us to almost feel small, almost feel like the way Moses felt after he received his vision, to remind us that we're like nothing. We're at this, in the scheme of things. Yes, we are amazing, and we're in the image of God, but that sometimes our ego gets in the way, and we have to go back to realize that we're very, very small in the universe. And some of these cathedrals add that frequency to us, that 500 and above, for a momentary time, just to say that there's something higher. But again, a lot of these things aren't, they're not honored the way they were looked at before. I think everyone goes there just to visit, and they think they're enjoying it for no apparent reason, but their body physiology is actually changing when they're entering it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good comments. Well, sum it up. Just remember that Armageddon is symbolic of the truth being presented over a period of time until the truth cannot be denied. You reach a point to where you face to face with the truth, and it's at that point there's a battle. People will resist with all their strength, and then the truth will still prevail. And then after it prevails, then that particular truth becomes established in the consciousness. And then we go on to a higher truth, and there's another battle down the road. So we're approaching another battle of Armageddon.
Well, people like to explain things in terms of what they already know, because they're afraid of new information. They're afraid of getting outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah. And that's what the disciple has to do. He has to get outside of his own comfort zone and look at, question everything. Even question whether or not you're actually here. Are you just a hologram, or are you really here? We're here in consciousness. We know that much. Okay, my friends, let's, since we're approaching the full moon, let's do the great invocation. Sound the Om. Oh. Visualize us in a valley surrounded by great mountains. There's a group of masters in a circle around a beautiful altar. They invite you to join them. You join the circle and grab the hand of a master on the right and one on the left, and everyone else in the group is doing the same thing. We make a great circle. And we await a presence. A light appears above the altar, and the Christ becomes manifest, standing in the air just above the altar. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. A tremendous light appears in heaven. It descends and fills us with even greater light than is present now. You look around at the circle, and every face is radiating light. And the Christ in the center radiates a tremendous white light. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. We look in the center, we see the Christ. He stretches forth his hand in your direction, and you hear him speak. Behold, I return in you. Feel my presence. And when you return, share my presence. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. And we hear again the master speak. Know the purpose of God. Look within and sense what it is that you must do and the steps that you must take. In silence, let those steps be revealed. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. We hear the Master again speak. The door must be sealed by the sons and daughters of men. You must do your part. First of all, let your consciousness ascend to be one with mine, and share that consciousness. Because in the true reality, evil does not exist. We must dispel illusion. Dispel illusion with the truth. The truth seals the door. Say this to yourself. I am the truth. I am a light to the world. I hold my mind steady in the light and shut the door where evil dwells. And then I let the door disappear. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. The plan on earth involves uniting the kingdom of humanity with the kingdom of God, renting the veil between heaven and earth. So we, as mortals, can associate with the masters, with spiritual beings, with our higher selves, with the Spirit of God, with the unseen world, those veils will eventually drop away. Let all those veils be removed as we can accept the removal. Say within yourself these words: I accept the removal of the veils to enjoy the presence of my Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, my friends. Any comments before we sign off?
Veils be gone.
Yeah, get rid of those veils.
And bring back the bells and get rid of the veils.
Yeah. Well, appreciate everybody showing up, and we will see you again soon. May the Spirit be with you.
Right on.
Carol.
You.